What's going on, guys? It is Brandon back here again today for another season preview. Now it is time for the Detroit Red Wings. And for Detroit, they've been stuck in limbo now for a couple years. They've been out of the playoffs, if they missed this year, going on 10 years. And it's strange because when I was growing up, Detroit was Detroit. They were a team that didn't miss the playoffs for 25 years, longest streak of the modern era. And they were just, while they were falling off, they were always a team to beat. They have not been a team to beat in quite some time, but under GM Steve Yzerman, things have gotten better for sure from where they were. They were going downhill, and then he committed to the rebuild, and now going into year 6 of his tenure, he's hoping to crack the playoffs. Coach Todd McLellan, he came in halfway through last year. This will be his second year, his first full year under as the head coach of the Detroit Red Wings, which he won a Stanley Cup with back when he was an assistant coach back in 2008, I believe, when Mike Babcock was the head coach and he was an assistant on his staff. Looking at the first line, you have James Van Riemsdyk on that first line according to Puckpedia. Certainly a choice. $1 million until 2026. Larkin, $8.7 million until 2031. And Raymond at $8.075 until 2032. Larkin and Raymond, good duo there. Van Riemsdyk, maybe try to put someone else on that top line. Maybe try Major out. Detroit has still a lot of young guys waiting to come up, and that's what we'll get to. We'll get to the young guys later because that's a point I want to make with this team. DeBrincat on the second line, $7.875 million until 2027. Kasper's an RFA in 2027, and Kane $3 million until 2026. They by far looked like the best line that Detroit had one last year when everyone was healthy. Kopp, $5.625 until 2027, a contract Detroit wishes would end, I'm sure. Compher, $5.1 million until 2028, another one, but overall, they're good third-line forwards. Appleton, $2.9 is brought in until 2027. He had a good playoff run with the Jets, and we'll see if he can continue that streak he was on at the end of the playoffs to help out the Detroit Red Wings this season. Soderblom, $1.125 until 2027, a very big guy. Will be an RFA next summer. Not next summer, 2 summers. Rasmussen, $3.2 million until 2028, exactly what you wanted, but a fourth-line center. And Berggren, $1.825 million until 2026, where he will also be an RFA. So, got some young guys in the lineup, got some veterans in the lineup. It's that mix that you want, but how much of that mix? Looking at other forwards they have Major, who I think should be in the lineup. I think you shouldn't have signed Van Riemsdyk, and you give Major a chance to fill in that spot. And you have Watson be your 13th forward. You also have Shine, Leonard, and Sheldon Dries. 3 guys who I'd watch not to make the lineup, but to watch in the coming seasons. Brandon Nygaard, Nate Danielson, and Carter Bear. All 3 of those guys, if they can go into this lineup, maybe replace Compher and Kopp and Van Riemsdyk, you have an excellent young group of forwards right there. Because right now, the only guys that should be pretty permanent on this team, Larkin, Raymond, DeBrincat, Kasper, Kane, Soderblom, Rasmussen, Berggren. You replace that entire third line, and you get that first line left wing spot. You put Major there, you put Bear, Brandon Nygaard, and Danielson on that line. You have a pretty young, excellent-looking team right there, if I had to say so. And, yeah. Defensively, Sherratt, $4.75 million until 2026, another contract which I'm sure they can't wait to end. Seider, $8.55 million until 2031, pretty good deal there. Edmondson's an RFA in 2026, he will be getting paid, and Detroit has cap space around $12 million, so they're fine on that front. Johansson, $1.125 until 2027, where he will be an RFA. So a couple more RFAs here. Eric Gustafsson, $2 million until 2026. Could run a power play. Not a big issue there. And they just signed Travis Hamonic, and they have him as the third right pairing defenseman, $1 million at 2026. Defensive depth, they signed Bernard Docker, who I think should get more of a chance. He's been with Ottawa and with Buffalo now. Maybe he never hits that potential, but I think he could fit in as a 6th, 7th defenseman when need be. Justin Hall, $3.4 million until 2026. He's just got this last year left, and then Detroit is free of him. Lagesson, Mitchell. Wallander's an interesting one. I think Wallander could be a good defenseman. Will he get a chance this season? Possibly if an injury happens, he might be the first call-up, or him or Bernard Docker, I would hope. Sandin Pellikka is the other name I'd like to watch. I'd insert him into that lineup. Sherratt moves on. Gustafsson moves on. Hamonic moves on. and you have Wallander, Sandin Pellikka, and Bernard Docker. I think that's a really young-looking defense. In 2 years, this team could look excellent. That's what I'm kind of getting on. Problem is, Patrick Kane in 2 years will be 40, around 40, and he's not going to be he's not going to be fantastic forever. As much as that's saying, that's my top 2 player of my entire life, as in my favorite players. Goaltending shouldn't be an issue with Detroit. They finally solved that problem, it looks like. John Gibson was brought in a trade with Anaheim, $6.4 million until 2027. Cam Talbot, $2.5 until 2026. Maybe he gets moved, and maybe they let Kosa play the backup role. Who knows? And goaltending depth, you have Kosa. I really think Kosa should be getting a chance right now. There's been rumors he's been linked to the Oilers. I think it'd be a mistake if Detroit did that. You don't really want to help out another team, and I feel like giving them Kosa would help them out greatly. So, complete list of additions: Van Riemsdyk, Appleton, Hamonic, Gibson, Bernard Docker, and Mitchell I put as the most notable ones. Subtractions: they trade Tarasenko to Minnesota. Tyler Mott's still a free agent for some reason. I think he's a much better player than, maybe he's just considering like bottom 6 offers where he wants to go. Jeff Petrie signed in Florida. Craig Smith signed, did not sign actually, I don't think. Peter Mrazek goes to Anaheim, and Alex Lyon goes to Buffalo. Weird trade last year. They traded Veleno for Mrazek and Smith. Then they let Mrazek go to Anaheim. Smith hasn't signed, and Veleno gets bought out by Seattle as soon as he's traded there from Chicago for Burakovsky, and then he signs with Montreal. So from that trade, Detroit ends up with nothing. To quote Willy Wonka and Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. That's a title. It's Willy Wonka. There's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which is the new one, and then, well, not newer one. Then Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. I think I'm right. That's beside the point. I'm going off topic. 2016-17 was the first year this team didn't make the playoffs since I believe it was 1989-90. I believe 91 until 2016. They had 25 straight years of being in the playoffs. And they had a good run, and they should have won more cups. That's a video I can do on another day. How many cups should some of these teams have won back in the day? 2016-17, 33, 36, and 13, 79 points, which was for 25th in the league. They finally fall out, and people say at last, the evil empire is dead. 2017-18, 30, 39, and 13. They dropped to 73 points and 27th in the league. 2018-19, 32, 40, and 10 with 74 points. That is good enough for 28th in the league as they just continuously drop. 2019-20, they hit rock bottom, and they kind of get screwed over in the process. 17, 49, and 5 at the time of the pause. I remember that year, I'm thinking Detroit's going to hit 60 losses. Detroit is going to be the first team in I don't know how long to hit 60 losses. Then right near the end of the year before the pandemic came on, Detroit won a couple games, and it really prevented them from hitting that 60 loss mark. But for a long period, Detroit was so bad that it was actually kind of incredible. They were 31st in the league that year, of course, with 39 points. In the shortened season of 56 games they had in the next season, they did better. 2021, 19, 27, and 10, 48 points, 27th in the league. Then they start building their way back up. And of course, they didn't win the lottery here at all either. They got Raymond, they got Sider. Who else did they get here? Those are really the top 2 picks. Later in the draft, they're European scouts. Detroit's always had the best European scouts, looking guys like Soderblom and Berggren, who they pick later. Johansson, Edvinsson, Major, Branson Nygaard, Wallander, Sandin Pellikka. Detroit, that was something they were always good at, is either European scouting, and that's why they were able to win so much, because they brought in all these European guys, and they do very well. Datsuk, Zetterberg, Lindstrom, Holmstrom, the list goes on. Besides the point. 21-22, they start building their way back up. 32, 40, and 10 for 74 points for 25th in the league. 22-23, 35, 37, and 10 for 80 points, which was still 25th in the league, but it's a 6-point improvement. 23-24, they got this close to making the playoffs. They tied with Washington for that second wild card, but Washington had the tiebreaker. 41, 32, and 9, 91 points, 18th in the league. A lot of people picked them to make the playoffs this year. It's like this team's right on the cusp, and they actually fall back by 5 points. 39, 35, and 8 this past season in 24-25. 86 points, 21st in the league. Detroit cannot. They are determined to make the playoffs, and you hope as this team honestly gets younger, you want them to start getting closer and closer. They were really close in 24. If they can get another crack at it, if they can get into the wild card spot in the Atlantic, then it shows a huge jump considering the bloodbath the Atlantic is. And speaking of the Atlantic, Toronto, Tampa, Florida, Ottawa, Montreal all made the playoffs ahead of them. There are 8 teams in the division. Detroit was 6th. Buffalo and Boston are the only 2 teams behind them. I consider Boston the only one to be completely, surely, they should be starting to fall off now. Because there was a couple seasons there where I considered all 8 teams could make the playoffs. Montreal comes back in. Ottawa gets back in. The top 3 are going to stay. They've been staying for a long time. Tampa in a couple years is going to fall out probably. Florida's got to still have a core in their prime. Toronto, maybe they fall back with the loss of Marner, but they still should be a good team. Ottawa, Montreal, you expect to go up. Buffalo, you have to expect to improve. And so where does Detroit fit in all this? It's going to be very difficult for them to claim one of those wild card spots if they do end up in the top 5 in that division. If they get in, the good news is their Atlantic's better than the Metro, so if they do end up in one of those spots, they have a high chance of getting those wild cards. If they don't, then it's another lost season in 10 years without playoffs for Detroit fans. Anyway, guys, I want to thank you all so much for watching this video. Let me know down below, what do you think of the Detroit Red Wings? Do you agree with my opinion that they need some of these contracts to end and they should be implementing some of their younger guys in the lineup? Major, Branson Nygaard, Danielson, Bear, those are 4 guys that the forward core could use. Wallander, Sandin Pellikka, Bernard Docker, 3 guys that could be implemented on defense, as well as maybe moving off Talbot and putting in Kosa, getting this team just as young as possible and ready to go for hopefully what can be the, well, I'm not going to say hopefully as a Blackhawks fan because the chant Detroit sucks and all, but Detroit fans will hopefully think that they can get their another 25 years in a row in the playoffs, and hopefully 4 cups along with it if they're them. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching this video, and I shall see you all in the next one. Have a good one.